Well, our senior reporter Karyn Maughan joins us now to talk more about the crisis at Sassa. And Karyn, just fill us in on the developments in the last few minutes, please.
Well, okay, so today's been an action-packed day at the Constitutional Court, and what essentially has happened is that Sassa has now filed that long-awaited report, which it indicated that it would file by the 31st of March, in which it's gone into a great deal of detail, apparently on the advice of its CEO, about exactly what went wrong here. And what is truly extraordinary is that this report confirms that Sassa made an interim report to the Constitutional Court following this 2013 ruling, in which the court essentially took on a supervisory role to ensure that this tender for a new service provider in terms of the payments was properly given, and went and provided this report in November 2015 and said, listen, we're completely on track here for Sassa to go ahead and to start the payments in 2017 March. Off the back of that, and basically indicating, I think, 7 steps that would be taken to make sure that that was a reality. Off the back of that, the Constitutional Court then says, oh, we are so happy, you're clearly in control of this situation, gives up its supervisory role. The minister, in this report, they're saying that Minister Bathabile Dlamini and the Sassa CEO admit that none of the promises that were made to the court in that interim report actually came to fruition, and they are taking full responsibility for that. They're not suggesting that this was any kind of deliberate act of malfeasance towards the court, but rather that their plans for Sassa to take over were completely unrealistic.
So what you're saying is what was presented to the court right now, there are denials that any lies were told. This was simply what they hoped to achieve.
Well, I think this court action is going to provide a full interrogation of that, and I think it's very interesting that the DEA is now asking for the CEO of Sassa to provide an affidavit under oath as to why he should not be held in contempt of the court's order in regard to the Sassa matter, which of course, given these reports, particularly over the weekend, that there seems to be some issue between Sassa and its CEO, possible suspension because he had taken the initiative to speak to the post office about other plans for payments, may well allow him to be quite open about the fact and what he tried to do in the interim. Of course, what is staggering is that also we see in this report that the Sassa and the minister appear to be admitting that they knew in October that they were facing a looming crisis. And up until now, we still have not had a satisfactory explanation as to why nothing was done. I'm reading the report at the moment and they're saying, look, delays happened and there were all these things that were going on. But they received legal advice which effectively said to them, you need to go to the Constitutional Court, you need to tell them what's going on, and you need to go to Treasury and beg them to allow a deviation of open tender processes so you can continue the CPS contract. So staggering revelations coming out in the Sassa report at the moment, and certainly with this impending litigation and the Constitutional Court saying we don't accept you applying for an extension of the contract and then withdrawing that application several hours later. We want we want you to engage with the parties in this case. We want you to either resolve this matter and come back to us, but there seems to be a strong suggestion that the court is going to also require Sassa to deal with this application for an extension of the contract.
Let's assume these expectations or these goals that were presented to the court as achievable by the department and the minister a few years ago were actually, well, that was the plan to go ahead with them. What reasons have actually been given for their not even meeting their own expectations in that regard?
Well, effectively they're saying is that the tender process went through a lot of drama, that certain bidders withdrew and that they couldn't find an appropriate bidder for the contract. But given that the Constitutional Court found that the CPS contract was so utterly flawed, that there weren't BEE requirements that were met in it, that in fact there were issues of illegality, that processes weren't properly followed, it's quite staggering to think that we haven't really had a full and substantive explanation as to what exactly was wrong with the bidding process. We now have the department saying they've got 18 bidders. So why was it so few? Was there a real and profound effort to engage and get bidders on the table? And why was it that so little was done post-November 2015 to ensure that steps were adequately taken? They're saying they were. But I think the biggest difficulty that the court will have, and I think this is why the court will, when the Black Sash matter goes to court and when there's some kind of resolution or what will happen with this extension application, Sassa and the Minister of Social Development are going to face an uphill battle around this question of, you knew in October, you did nothing.
It's a very intriguing story indeed, and worrying too, especially for those 17 million recipients. Karyn Maughan, thanks very much for explaining that to us. Our senior reporter covering that Sassa story. A lot of developments in that story this afternoon.